So we've talked about security concepts, but let's talk about a specific scenario where we're going to develop those concepts and really see how they work in the real world of dynamic CRM. So the scenario let's talk about a summer intern, and the scenario here is that this person, whoever has this security role, they need to have a lot of privileges on lead records. They're creating lead records. Maybe they're taking business cards as the sales team gets back from the summer conference season, things like that. So they're going to be creating lots of lead records. We'll need lots of privileges for leads. In particular, they'll need to be able to create a new lead record for anybody in the organization. They will create new contact and account records, but only that are owned by them, only for themselves. We don't want them to append child records to accounts, any child records. So we don't want them attaching anything to account records. But the scenario is we maybe want them to be able to append child records to contact records that they own. Notes, we don't want them to append notes to any records. And we don't want them to export anything to Excel. Nothing gets exported to Excel. So let's take a look at a security role and how requirements like that would be supported. So here is you can see highlighted are the account, contact, and lead record types. And notice that account and contact have user level privilege on the create. User level access to the create privilege, sorry, is the way to say that, for both account and for contact. But notice lead has that full green circle, so that's an organization level, access level for the create privilege for lead. So as we create a new lead record, I'd be able to give it an owner other than myself if I have the security role, but not so for account and contact. We're going to take a look at that. So there's those first two bullet points. Now what about appending? Look at the account and follow account all the way across till we get to append to, and notice we get the empty red circle. So that's none. The access level is none for the append to privilege on account of what that means is that I won't be able to attach any child records to accounts. I go down to contact here for append to. Notice I have user level access to the append to privilege on contact. So if I own a contact record with this security role, I would be able to attach child records to that contact record. But now let's go to the next one here. Let's go all the way down to the bottom there and look at notes. And notice notes, the append privilege access level is none. So what this means is I won't, with this security role, if it's the only security role I have, I won't be able to attach a note record to any record. That's the difference between append and append to. So append has to do with what that record can be appended to, and append to has to do with what you can append to that record. Now let's talk about Excel. On the Business Management tab, you'll see these miscellaneous privileges. You see that highlighted at the bottom of this screen. And notice that export to Excel, bulk edit, some other things like that, those are set here to the none access level. And the thing to notice there is that there's no reference. It's not an entity specific type of a privilege. It's a miscellaneous privilege. So what that's going to mean is that we won't see those the ability to say to select multiple records and edit them, or in this case the ability to export to Excel. And we're not going to see the Excel button on any ribbons, somebody with this security role. So what I want to do now is jump into Dynamic CRM. First we'll go in as the system administrator and take a look at these security roles, and then we'll change our persona and sign in as the summer intern and see how the experience is a little bit different. See how security roles manage that. So I signed in to Dynamics CRM, and I'm signed in as Richard Knudsen. I am playing the role, I'm the system administrator here in this particular organization. This is an essentially uncustomized dynamic CRM with one exception. I've got a custom security role. So let's take a look at what we have here. If I click the settings and then administration, I can see things like business units, security roles, teams, users. Let's start with business units. Pretty simple structure to this organization. Here's my root business unit. The name of the organization is Dynamic Business Processes, April 5th. Convention I use so I remember what happens at the end of the 30-day free trial. I've got a business unit here called West, and it's a child business unit of this root business unit, which it has to be, since I can tell that this is the root business unit. It's got the same name as the organization. And if I look at users, see, I've got two users. Here's my current user that I'm signed in as. This is the system administrator. Notice it's associated with the root business unit. If I click Manage Roles, scroll down, I can see that, sure enough, this user is the system administrator. If I click on Rooster here, select that record, Manage Roles, notice that this user has one role, the intern role. We'll look at that in a minute, and it's the only role that that user has. You might ask yourself, what would happen if you had a dynamic CRM that didn't have a system administrator? What if you had a CRM organization that doesn't have somebody that can maintain the organization? And see what happens here if I deselect that. It does say removing all roles from users to prevent the user from accessing Dynamics CRM. Do you really want to do this? Sure. You change your security, you could potentially lose, so I get a couple of warnings. Then I get an error message. And this is actually a pretty good error message. So you can see that what you're seeing here is that since I've only got one user in this CRM organization that has that system administrator role, I can't remove the role because it would really make the organization nobody could access it. Well, nobody could maintain it anymore. And since this user is not an administrator, he wouldn't be able to bootstrap himself up to a system admin. So you are prevented from doing some things like that. So that's probably a good thing. Now let's take a closer look at a couple of claims that I made in the conceptual treatment of security roles. I said that when you create a child business unit, everything cascades down. What does that mean? Well, let's go to let's go create a child business unit and see what that looks like. But first, let's look at security roles. Let's go look at security roles. And notice we look at security roles in the context of a business unit. So if I select this root business unit here, we've got 16 security roles. And if I select the West business unit, notice we've got 17 security roles. I've still got the intern role, but I've got this West salesperson role. It looks like a custom role just for this organization. How does this work? Well, let's, in the context of the West business unit, let's open this intern role up. And notice in the UI here, you'll see this scary red text. At the top says inherited roles cannot be updated or modified. That's because when I created this business unit, since that intern role was created at the root business unit, it cascades down along with all the other security roles. So let's go back to business units then and see if we can replicate that. Go to business units, let's create a new one, and let's round out our org structure here by creating an East business unit. It's going to be a child of the Dynamics CRM, basically the root business unit. Suppose I simply save and close it. I've got two child business units, and if I examine security roles here for the East business unit, we'll see that the East business unit, when you first create it, it's going to have exactly the same number of security roles as the business unit it's a child of, because they all cascade down. So if I create another role here at the root business unit, suppose I create a brand new security role here, it will cascade down to both of those child business units. You can't avoid that, and you can't do things like go delete a security role from here. You can't modify it here, but I could go to the East business unit, create a new security role. Maybe I want to do something like, let's grab that salesperson role, go to more actions and copy it so I don't have to start from scratch, and let's call this East salesperson. And when it's finished copying, notice it's associated with the East business unit. I can't change that. It's got all the privileges and the access levels and all that of that salesperson role, so I'm not starting from scratch. But this security role now exists only within the East business unit. If I created another business unit that's a child now of the East business unit, it would inherit this. So if I create a new business unit, new, and we'll make this a child of the East business unit by just changing that lookup, and we'll call this East IT, for example. If I now examine security roles in the context of that business unit, you see how the East salesperson role had to cascade down to the East IT business unit because East IT is a child of East business unit. So you can't get around that. You always get cascading there, and you can't modify this role here because from the context of East IT, this is an inherited business role. And that's probably a good thing. So we looked at our users, and we saw that this user, remember, has the intern security role. Let's look at that security role now in a little bit more detail. We will go to the root business unit and just verify. It's really the only real interactive user is Richard, that's assigned to the root business unit. But if we go to security roles, we will see that the intern role is specified here. And if I open up the security role here, here's what it looks like. Get the key at the bottom. Let's look at the core records. Now this will review some of the things I talked about in the scenario. So notice that the account record type, we have organization or user level access to the create privilege for account. So I can only create accounts for myself. Organization level read, user level write, no delete privilege. I've got organization level append. But notice no append to, so that means I cannot attach any child records to an account record. Go down to contact. Got organization or user level access for the create privilege for contact. Organization level read. I go to advanced find, I can see them all. Only modify my own records. No delete privileges. I've got the ability to append contact record to any other record it could be appended to. And notice here I do have user level append to. So as long as I own a contact record, I can append child records to it. Unlike account, can't append anything to account. Now we go down to, scroll down here a little bit. We go to note, and the most important point for note is that append, that's the fourth column from the right. If I go to note, notice append is none. It's empty red circle, so I won't be able to append notes to anything. That's what I expect to happen here. That's what I predict. You look at activities, notice we've got full green on for the append and append to privileges, but especially for appends, important here, because that means I can associate or append activity records to other record types, but not notes. So now let's go to business management. If I scroll down here, Here are these miscellaneous privileges I talked about. Export to Excel. Notice it's all or nothing. I've turned that off. Bulk edit. I've turned that off. Mail merge, all these other things, they're all turned off. Let's turn off the ability to go mobile if they did have a mobile client. Maybe we don't want them syncing to Outlook. These are all, web mail merge. We'll have none of that. No reading of license info. Well, actually, I don't want that. I might need that to just sign in. But so all those miscellaneous privileges, we will turn those off. And then, just to sort of extend this experience a little bit, let's remove privileges for big, wide swaths of our dynamic CRM territory. So let's remove all privileges for campaigns, for marketing lists. I'm toggling through the entity column here. And we got most of the sales records, things like invoice, order, product quote. Those are all turned off. Let's go to service. Do the same thing for service. No cases. No contracts. And no contract templates. Service management. Same thing here. Let's just delete all these permissions. Sometimes it's easier to do it one way rather than another, but we've got all those things turned off, and we'll see how much this changes the user experience for somebody with this security role. So now that we've made a few changes to the security role and tooled around in here enough to see what we kind of expect to happen, I'm going to sign out from my administrator account and then sign back in as that intern user. So I sign out. Now let's sign back in to my Hotmail account. Into the same organization. There's the dynamic business processes. Now we've already started to see things like you do not have sufficient privileges to view this chart, so we're seeing some impact here. If I click on sales, first thing to notice, I see leads, opportunities, accounts, contacts, but notice no quotes, orders, invoices, any of that stuff. Go to marketing, leads, accounts, contacts, but no campaigns, no marketing lists, none of that. Service, I don't really see anything in service. It's just that accounts and contacts and things like goals and goal metrics are exposed here. Right? But I'm not seeing cases or any of those things. Okay, so let's see how the user experience in terms of working with records and things like that is impacted. First of all, let's change my options so I don't have to look at the getting started pane. Change my time zone while I'm at it. I won't show the get started pane in 250 records. Okay, so those are the personal options that I want. Okay, so leads, remember we have a fair amount, as a user with this security role, we have a fair amount of privileges to leads. In particular, I can, let's get rid of some of these test records to see if I have delete privilege on lead. Not on all records. Notice that these records are owned by somebody else, and I've only got user level privilege on delete. So we'll see more of that in a minute. But let's go create a new lead record. And remember the issue of what level of access I have to create records. There's the issue of assigning records to somebody else as I create the record. So let's suppose I'm taking information from the sales reps as they get back, diligently entering these leads as they come in. So Mark Green with Acme Drugs came and dropped his business card. And I want to come down here and assign this to the appropriate sales rep. And I click Save. And notice I successfully created this record and gave it the owner. Gave it a different owner. This is not me. This is Richard Knudsen, and this is the system administrator user. And the reason that I can do this, remember, is my security role has organizational level access for the create privilege on lead. So that's good. If I click Add here, notice I can add child records. That's because I've got Append To on lead. And since I've got a append privilege for the activity record types, I can go ahead and add an appointment. So I'll schedule a follow-up appointment. No problem. But you don't see any place to add a note here. And even if I click on the Notes and Activities tab here, I can't add notes. There's nothing on the ribbon that lets me add a note because, remember, we removed the append privilege entirely for the note record type. That was that empty red circle. So I can't attach notes to anything. Okay, so that shows a couple of things. Let's go to an account record. And if I create a new account record, remember I have user level access for the create privilege for account. So if I'm creating a new account, IMG, and it's assigned to me, and I click Save and create a new one, no problem, because I've got user level create privilege for account. But if I try to create Microsoft and I want to assign it, if I can find, here we go, not to me but to somebody else, and do a save and close. Notice that here, unlike my experience with leads, since I don't have, I've only got user level create privilege for the account record type, I can't create an account and assign it to somebody else. Now this might be confusing. You might think, if you've got a little experience with this, you might think, shouldn't that be governed by the assign privilege? But it really isn't. It's the create privilege, because this is the first time we're saving the record. See, I can't save a record without having an owner, since it's a required field. So technically the assign event isn't happening here. This is the account create event, and that's why the permissions, the privilege, is governed by the access level you have on the create privilege. It's not the assign privilege that's operative here, because that event is not firing. By the way, you can see the same thing in a workflow. If you write an automatic workflow and you have it triggered on the assign, your record is assigned event. When you create a new record, even though you have to supply an owner, you might think that's an assignment, but it isn't. That workflow won't fire. Only workflows that are triggered on the record is created event will fire when you click save for the first time. So let's go ahead and navigate away from there. Now, accounts. Remember, one of the other requirements was that we not be able to attach child records to accounts. So here's an account record that's owned by me. So I've got privileges to make changes to it and to do some things like that. Let's go to contacts. I want to add a contact here. Uh-oh, there's no new button here. And that's because what? Because the append privilege for the account entity is none for the user with the security role. So I can't add any child records to an account. So notice, if you go to the General tab here, there's no Add button. I can't add anything. This isn't because notes don't have Append To. This is because accounts don't have Append. I can't add anything to an account record here. Not notes, not activities, not contacts, not opportunities, none of that stuff. Okay, so if I click on opportunities, notice there's no new button up here. That has to do with the append privilege for account. Go to contacts, Let's open up Tom Nolan's contact record. Now if I go to subcontacts here, notice I can add a new contact here because I do have append privilege. I've at least got user level append privilege for contacts. So I could add a activity, I could add an opportunity, I could add a subcontact as you just saw. But what I can't add is a note, and again, the reason I can't add a note is what? It's because don't have append on the note record type. So if you want to be able to sort of universally prevent somebody from adding, say, notes to any record, that's the append privilege on note. If you want to prevent them from adding something specific or from adding anything to a parent record, specific parent like a contact or account, that's going to be append to on the parent record. That's the interesting thing there. Notice, no Excel button on any data grid. Don't see it, do you? That's because that's the miscellaneous task privilege that we have prevented them from being able to do. If I go and grab a couple of contact records, suppose, let's go to accounts, and if, not that this is the best example in the world, but suppose those were records that I wanted to merge. Well, I can't merge them because the merge button ain't there, because I don't have privilege on that miscellaneous task privilege. We removed that. Notice there's also no edit, no bulk edit. You can't bulk edit because we removed that via security roles. So this is a pretty good example, I think, of how changes in the security role really impact the user experience, and it's also a pretty good illustration of the fact that you can't test this from the context of system administrator. If you're used to just working as a system administrator and you make changes to security role, you don't really know how they work until you go in there and play the role of that user. So you really do need to, create another Windows Live ID for yourself associated with a different email address that you have, and then get in the habit of testing those changes that you make, whether not just for security roles, but how workflows or dialogue processes work, how charts and dashboards are exposed to users. All those kinds of things really need to be tested with something other than that system administrator security role.